This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Good afternoon. Let's get right down to business, shall we? Doing more at 4 weekday afternoons right here on 790 KBC, right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify too. Stocks finishing lower today as the year-end rally took a bit of a breather ahead of the big inflation report we'll be getting tomorrow. That's the Consumer Price Index report coming out first thing tomorrow morning. The Dow came in for a closing loss of 154 points, settling at 44,248. The S&P 500 slipping some more from its record high, down 18, and the NASDAQ slipping just about 50 points. A sell-off today in government debt pushing Treasury yields to their highest we've seen in a couple of weeks. Looks like the yield on the 10-year note now at 4.22%. Shares of Walgreens moving higher today after the Wall Street Journal reported the drugstore chain was in discussions to sell itself to private equity firm Sycamore Partners. Walgreens Boots Alliance shares up nearly $2 at 10 and change. Investors feeling pretty good these days. Ordinary investors, as a matter of fact, according to MarketWatch, sending an extremely bullish signal on stocks, creating the risk of a negative surprise should speculative behavior lead to a sudden bursting of a potential stock market bubble next year, according to researchers at Deutsche Bank. Consumers, they say, have never felt so optimistic about gains in the stock market over the next 12 months, eclipsing anything we saw around the year 2000, according to their global head of macro and thematic research at Deutsche Bank. Federal and state judges today blocking supermarket chain Kroger, the parent company of Ralph's here in Southern California's merger with rival Albertsons, on grounds that would stifle competition in the grocery store business. Gold moving higher today for the third day in a row. In fact, now the highest we've seen since early November, about a 5-week high on gold. Right now hovering above $2,700 at $2,723.40 an ounce. Price of oil moving higher today with the latest upheaval in the Middle East as the regime of Assad collapsed over the weekend. Global benchmarks, as well as the price of oil here in New York, moving higher with the price of oil in New York of 22 cents at 68 and change. And in London, Brent crude, the global benchmark, moved higher to 72.19 a barrel. Of course, watching the latest developments in the murder of a prominent health insurance executive, Brian Thompson. Investigators now in New York and Pennsylvania are working to piece together why 26-year-old Luigi Mangione might have diverged from his path to make the violent and radical decision to gun down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Manhattan last week. Mangione, the suspect now in the fatal shooting of the healthcare executive in Manhattan. The killing sparking discussions about executive safety, among other things. I'll talk about all of that later this hour with Kent Moyer, President and CEO of World Protection Group. He'll be joining us live later this hour. Santa's helpers, meanwhile, racking up big credit card bills. Should you use home equity to pay holiday expenses? We'll talk about that and other consumer credit issues with Linda Bell at Bankrate.com. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, crypto too, the whole works now. Joining us live, money manager Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management, which happens to be based right here in Southern California. Also author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Frank. You know, it's the time of the year when everybody's making predictions about the market, about the economy, and we know how difficult predictions are to make, as Mark Twain used to say, especially about the future. Don't make predictions about the future, but we've got a very poor track record, even at the Federal Reserve. Their dot plot has a terrible track record since its inception in 2012. And then there's the Survey of Professional Forecasters. They've been around since 1968. They're wrong about 80% of the time, and we do it anyway. So here are some of the predictions that we're paying attention to. Oxford Economics believes that the rotation into U.S. cyclical sectors following the presidential election is going to be the theme for 2025. We're going to see not the Magnificent Seven, but the left behind rest of them of the 500 major companies that trade publicly. The other 423 companies, the other 400 and whatever companies are likely to see more action. It's interesting. The prospect of aggressive tariffs is a clear downside risk that everybody's citing in these forecasts. The scenario where Donald Trump makes good on his recent threats, especially to impose big tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and additional tariffs on China. But looking at the dollar and how it's acting, it's up almost 3% since November 5th. And ironically, a higher dollar pays for these tariffs because U.S. products cost more, and we get the benefit with a higher dollar. So who knows?
That is a very interesting and excellent point. We're on the air live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management. Right now, the dollar's at 105 versus the euro. We're at 152 versus the yen. The pound is at 128. And so it's still the almighty dollar in this environment. A lot of talk about trade war 2 coming up here. What do you see ahead with the tariffs? Obviously, President Trump, a big believer in tariffs as a tool, and new concerns now about inflation. Looks like inflation is back on the Fed's radar screen. We'll be getting the latest reading on inflation the first thing tomorrow morning, and then the big Fed meeting next week. What do you see ahead on trade and inflation?
Well, for inflation, since we're going to get the report tomorrow, Frank, I think it's going to be flat, maybe slightly down. The dollar has been on a upward trajectory for almost 50 years now. The way Americans and foreigners use dollars, it really has nothing to do with gold or other commodities. It's just based on the ease at which you can transact business with it. Obviously, it's held up by federal deposit insurance, but a higher dollar is lower inflation for us, so that's a positive. Tariffs, on the other hand, that's a wild card, but going back to Oxford Economics, they think the prospect of aggressive tariffs is an unlikely scenario, the one that everybody's laying out. Higher costs, more inflation. As long as the dollar remains strong, we don't see it.
All right, and Bitcoin hitting record highs recently, pulling back below 100,000 here again, bouncing around, and now at last check of about $100 to 96,826. A lot of people talking about that being a store of wealth, like gold has been in the past and still is, of course. I know you probably don't have the laser eyes on, but maybe you do now after seeing a Bitcoin pop above 100,000 recently. And what are your thoughts about the crypto space and Bitcoin here now?
Well, it's impossible to ignore, Frank. I did look into the current cost to mine one Bitcoin this year, and it does vary depending on electricity prices, the mining hardware efficiency, and other operational expenses and overhead. But the consensus cost that I'm finding to mine one Bitcoin, produce one Bitcoin, is approximately $49,500 per coin. And then you add the additional expenses, like all the equipment that's needed, the overhead, the employee count, and so forth. That average cost rises to about $96,000 per Bitcoin. So it's not too surprising that it's trading at current levels.
Interesting. Well, you got a good calculator, it sounds like, as well. So that's very interesting. And so these other coins have been bouncing around today. Ethereum, which was up above 4,000 recently, back down to around 3,600, and Doge, which has seen an eye-popping gain. It was 7 cents earlier this year, and now at 39 cents. It was above 40 cents recently. So you're right. It's hard to ignore these prices and these gains. Certainly, it's a lot more fun when it goes up. And again, we speak to the biggest fans of crypto here, as well as the harshest critics, and a lot of people raising the question of Bitcoin as well as blockchain adoption and all that. Turning now to gold, which is still around, and looks like a lot of countries piling into gold. Gold has made a pretty good run today, up $5 at the moment at $2,723.40 an ounce. Silver, let me bring it up here, is above $32 an ounce now, $32.67. We've watched those metals move up sharply this year, too. Where do you see gold and silver go as we head into the new year?
Well, I think the recent developments in Syria, after the dictator president there fled and rebel troops captured the capital in Damascus, that apparently stimulated some additional demand for gold. Now, the People's Bank of China said just the other day, I think it was Saturday or Sunday, that they bought 160,000 troy ounces in November. After pausing for a while. They've been a major buyer of bullion since late 2022. They're not the only country doing this. Now, there is some skepticism about the accuracy of China's central bank's gold purchases because, they say one thing and do another commonly, but it appears they have been really purchasing more and more gold to further stabilize the currency in the region. I think that gold it's just on a roll, and right now the momentum is there. Same thing with silver. I like them. They've been undervalued for so long now. We're finding an equilibrium valuation for the diminishing supply of both gold and silver. They're worth more.
Looks like the government regulators pulling the plug on what would have been one of the biggest merger deals of the year. Kroger, the parent company of Ralph's, and Albertson, the judges looking this thing over, decided against going forward with the merger here. As far as M&A activity is concerned, your thoughts on what happened this year and the outlook ahead, and your reaction to the news today that Kroger and Albertsons will not be merging?
Frank, there's been a rush to do more of these, enforcement deals, antitrust deals, and to create more barriers to M&A. And the reason, of course, it makes sense. It's better for competition if there are more players, and we see it all the time. But on the other hand, we've got a new Treasury Secretary appointee that's going to be coming in. Scott Bessent. He's viewed as a steady hand over what's a very volatile bond market, and all these M&A deals are financed with borrowed money, and add to that, there'll be some new guards in pretty much every single department. I expect to see more M&A department activity. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kroger make another run.
All right, we're on there live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management, and we're going to be discussing the tragedy involving the murder of the United Health executive in New York and the arrest of a suspect in that case. But certainly the health insurance companies have been in the spotlight lately. What are your thoughts about that sector here now?
Well, I like the sector. It's been actually somewhat of a poor performer, even with the weight loss drug industry on a tear. Clearly, that's a very valuable industry. It's creating jobs, and people are losing weight. Millions of people are losing weight, getting healthier as a result of semaglutide and some of these other drugs. Lilly, for example, has been flatlining. It really deserves to be higher. I think that's true for AstraZeneca. The United Healthcare tragedy speaks to what's going on in the world. It's just a more dangerous place. We're seeing disruptions in many parts of the world, even the European community. Germany has political instability. France, we saw what happened there last week. South Korea. The temperament in the world right now is somewhat, we've all gone a little crazy. So hopefully 2025 brings better times.
I mention it every time we speak, but you wrote the book, Wisdom on Value Investing. Maybe you can explain a little bit more for us about value investing compared to the other choices, and a bit more about your book, if you don't mind.
Well, sure, Frank. Value investing is really the only kind of investing. You weigh out the value of something, and you make a bet what you would expect logically would be the future value. Now, markets go on sale routinely, just like the sales in every other sector of the economy. Cars, for example, they say weekday mornings in September are the best time to buy cars. Walk-in traffic is typically light. Airplane tickets, Wednesdays, about 3 weeks before your departure date, that's when you get the best deals. Clothing, Thursday evenings, 6 to 8 weeks after the new styles and the new items have arrived, that's the best time. Groceries, it's usually Sunday evenings. Well, it's the same with stocks and sectors. There's 11 major stock sectors, and they don't all go up at the same time. As I mentioned, this last couple of years, we've seen 7 big technology companies lift the markets. What about the rest of them? Many stocks are cheap, and what we do with value investing is we weigh out the value. We find out what intrinsically are the parts of this business worth. How sustainable is it? Does it have a competitive advantage that's sustainable? And what does it pay us while we wait around? So that's the basic premise of value investing.
On the live with Gabriel Wisdom, with American Money Management, author of the book Wisdom on Value Investing. At this point, Gabriel Wisdom, let me ask you the big question here, and that is, where are you putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, I had mentioned Alphabet. I like it even more now at GOOG, Google. It's selling at its lowest price earnings multiple in maybe 2 decades due to new concerns now that the search engine is going to become less popular compared to Chat GPT. But Google's cloud has a huge competitive advantage, and that's the high switching costs. Once a company has built its IT infrastructure on the Google cloud, migrating to another provider is time-consuming, it's expensive. Many businesses rely on Google Cloud for critical storage services, for machine learning, for software development tools. They say nearly 80% of businesses experience some kind of vendor lock-in, and that's the beauty of Google in my mind. I'm looking at GOOG right now as a value stock. And then finally, the worst to first phenomena, the worst performing stocks in the Dow 30 generally do pretty well in the new year. I'm looking at those companies, and they would include then Intel, which is no longer there, but Boeing, Nike, Dow, Johnson & Johnson. And you mentioned Walgreens Boots Alliance. That's a special situation, but it's coming. It's got my attention right now.
Terrific, Gabriel. Thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon. That is Money Manager Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management, based here in Southern California, author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, always great to have you with us here. Thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
And let's get right out to the freeways now here on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Good afternoon. The Dow pulling back 154 points today. The S&P 500 down 18. The NASDAQ down 49. All three of the major averages pulling back some more from recent all-time highs. The yield in the 10-year note now 4.22%. Big merger deal, not going to happen in the grocery business. Kroger, the parent company of Ralph's, will not be merging with Albertsons. Kroger stock moved higher by nearly $3 to 60 and change. Albertsons shares down 43 cents at $18.51. We did see judges squashing that proposed merger deal, which would have been one of the biggest of the year, valued at nearly $25 billion. Federal and state judges blocking the merger on grounds that it would stifle competition in the grocery industry, and moves that cast serious doubt on a deal that became central to concerns over higher grocery store prices. Looks like U.S. steel stock down 10% today, tumbling on a report in Bloomberg that President Biden would block its acquisition by the Japanese steel company Nippon Steel. U.S. steel shares down nearly $4 at 35 and change on that news. Shares of Walgreens Boots Alliance, parent company of Walgreens supermarket or drugstore chain, I should say, up $1.57 today at $10.42. The news here is that the company might be taken private. Price of oil ticking higher today. Right now it's $68.53 in New York. Gold moving higher at $2,723.40 an ounce, and silver moving to $32.67 an ounce. Checking the cryptos now, we see Bitcoin up a couple $100 now at 96,701, Ethereum at 3,632, and Doge at 39 cents. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Investigators in New York City and in Pennsylvania are still working to figure out why a 26-year-old apparently got away from a charmed life and decided to murder the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, in Manhattan last week. Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old suspect in the fatal shooting of the healthcare executive in front of the New York Hilton last week, apparently living a charmed life, the grandson of a wealthy real estate developer, valedictorian of his Baltimore prep school, and with degrees from one of the nation's top private universities. Let's bring in an expert on executive protection, which is also getting a lot of attention these days. Joining us live now is veteran executive protection expert Kent Moyer, the president and CEO of World Protection Group. Kent Moyer, thank you very much for taking the call on this shocking story, and now with the arrest of the suspect. Give us your reaction to what happened.
Well, thank you for having me on your show, Frank. And, I think this guy is kind of, with his manifesto, pretty well admitted, and it may be, enough evidence to convict him on his own writings and his connection to researching about the Unabomber. And, he had back injury and surgery, and ultimately I don't think that maybe had the outcome and caused him a lot of pain and grief and whatever. And he isolated himself individually by himself and didn't have interaction with his family or his close friends. So, it's a series of events over a period of time that maybe caused him to do this, but he had everything. I mean, here's a guy, he went to Penn, he got a master's degree, super smart guy. I'm not sure, I had back surgery 6 months ago. Wouldn't make me want to go out and kill the doctor that did the surgery to me. I mean, I certainly think there's other support systems that would have maybe helped him, and maybe a second surgery, or but all of a sudden he decided to go in a different direction than most normal people would go in.
On there live with Kent Moyer, who's an executive protection expert here in Southern California. And, of course, now executives rethinking their protection plans, their security, and so forth. Are you hearing from more executives these days?
Yes, but, I think it's a knee-jerk reaction, because what happens is when something, major happens like this to a CEO, people have a knee-jerk reaction. We want to review our plans, and we want to look at what we're doing security-wise. And unfortunately, sometimes, as time goes on, they relax those security, protocols and the executive protection around the CEO, which, clearly was the case with United Health. I saw on LinkedIn they posted jobs for executive protection and security, and then they ended up not hiring people because they had a fourth quarter hit that caused them to cut back on security. So at the time when the CEO was killed, I don't think he had any protection around him.
Tell us how executives should be best protected, given the crazy environment we live in.
Well, I think you got to, there are different corporations. One corporation may look at security as, it's a necessary evil. We want to get the cheapest company possible. It's a cost drain. We don't, make money from security. And another company would say, no, we it affects our stock. If somebody gets injured or hurt, we have to manage the threats. We have to have intelligence on social media, what people are saying about our CEO. And they look at executive protection as a really important thing to add to their company. And they look at a quality company to bring in to be able to do that. And I've had both. I've had where the CEO is saying, don't stay in too close to me. Don't be near me. Go over, stand by the tree over there, so it doesn't look like I have protection around me. And other people embrace it. And really, executive protection should be viewed as an ROI to the company, where we can get the individual CEO to more meetings in a day, be very organized in how we do advances, and be able to do the route planning, so that we get and maximize the CEO's time management through executive protection. So we have both sides, one extreme to the other, and some in between. But I think, I would recommend to companies and CEOs, you have to add this, and you have to add the intelligence piece. And then when the threats come in and inappropriate correspondence, you got to be able to manage it in an appropriate way, investigate it, so that this doesn't escalate into a CEO getting injured or attacked or hurt. And that's very easy to do. It's not that difficult to do. And, many times we do things with very little resources, and we maximize to make sure that the client is okay.
In this case, he was going to a company meeting there. I've been, and you probably too, have been to that New York Hilton. They have that huge ballroom there, and just that's where he was heading, as well as individual executive protection. What about event protection and the considerations there?
Well, event protection, kind of between the executive protection and the event protection, they go hand in hand if it's the same company that is doing both. And the reality is there's always a coordination of getting the client in and out of there. And if there's threats, you want to get them in and out in an area where nobody knows they're going to come in and out of the location. So it's very easy to work with the event security. I mean, we do it all the time. We do it combined with law enforcement, combined with private security, and combined with executive protection and event security. So, within our industry, we all try to work together so that we all have a great outcome. Nobody gets injured or hurt in any capacity, no matter whether there's multiple executive protection teams coming to that event with different CEOs.
Anything new on technology or anything else cutting edge in your world right now that people are looking at to enhance security using drones and that sort of thing, or any other high-tech tools available nowadays?
Drones are the hot topic. Drones are being utilized that they're responding to 24/7 911 calls. Police are utilizing them more. Drone countermeasure systems. We had where we were doing a risk vulnerability assessment. They want us to go down to Pacific Palisades to see what a drone could see of their house in their area, up in the hills in Pacific Palisades. So, and drones can be used to provide, patrols on the property and communicate with the bad guy. Drones have speaker systems on them. They have spotlights, so if somebody's hiding in the bushes. They have thermal imaging cameras that you can look, during the day, use a thermal imaging camera, or at nighttime. So drones are the hot topic, and we're the leading company in the United States because we're the only company that's got the 3 waivers to fly over top of people beyond visual line of sight and below weather minimum. So I just was in Japan, and we have a Japan corporation of our company, and we're trying to get the police in Japan to use drones in their patrols and their everyday operations.
Well, and of course, in Japan, the former prime minister was assassinated some years ago. Anytime something like that happens, or high-profile assassination attempts, as we saw here in the U.S. Recently, everyone takes another look at security. So anything else that you'd like to mention about executive security here?
Well, when you talk about the former prime minister that was killed, part of the problem is no matter what background you come from, whether you're a Navy SEAL, you're a cop, or whatever, you have to be cross-trained in the protection work. And cross-training in the protection work is a different animal. It's a different training. And, the goal in our industry is proactive, preventive, that there's not one incident of an attack or, a killing or anything like that. And that's a different world than police, which are reactionary. After 911 crime occurs, 911 calls, police respond. So there's exciting things happening in the security industry, and technology is part of it. Artificial intelligence is a part of it, and it's all exciting to see. But also the bad guys can use the same technology.
And indeed, there are weapon systems on some of these drones available as well, right?
Absolutely. And there's a huge warning right now that the next terrorist attack could be done with drones or drone swarms. And we're not prepared for it. I'll tell you that right now. Police, military in this country, we're not prepared for it.
I'm sure you'll get a big response here. What's the best way to reach you, Kent? Do you have a website, or how can people contact you here?
Yes, our website is worldprotectiongroup.com, and our phone number is 310-390-6646, and we're happy to help any client, and obviously even just give some general information to keep people safe.
Terrific. Well, thanks for taking the call today. That is veteran executive protection expert Kent Moyer, the president and CEO of World Protection Group, based here in Southern California. Kent, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Have a great day. Take care.
You too. Thank you very much. Out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Happy holidays. Looks like Santa's helpers getting out there. In the process, unfortunately, racking up sometimes big credit card bills. The Bankrate 2024 Holiday Shopping Survey finds that 28% of holiday shoppers say they're stressed about the cost of holiday shopping and it'll strain their budgets. More than a quarter of respondents plan to take on a form of debt for their holiday spending. Let's bring in the expert on all this, Linda Bell at Bankrate.com. Linda, thanks very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be with you, Frank.
All right, let's take it from the top. A lot of people racking up big credit card bills, some turning to home equity to pay holiday expenses and doing all sorts of things. Give us an update on what's happening this season.
Well, as we know now, home prices are at record highs. Americans sitting on a record amount of home equity, about $300,000 in home equity, and about $200,000 of that is tappable, meaning that they can borrow that amount while still maintaining that 20% equity cushion that most lenders do require. What that means is great. You can tap into the equity with a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit, but the important thing I want people to remember is that even though you may have all this equity, all this money at your fingertips, so to speak, if you go and take a home equity loan or a line of credit, your home is on the line. Really, your home is collateral for this line of credit or for this loan. And if you can't repay it, you could face foreclosure. And this gift that you want to buy for your loved one and you decide to tap into your home equity, it's definitely not worth it for putting your home on the line.
All right, and of course, HELOC, as they're known, right? Home equity lines of credit, HELOCs, the rates have gone up too, right? The interest rate?
Yeah, the interest rates on HELOCs are definitely more favorable when looking at other rates in terms of personal loans,
credit card rates.
In terms of personal loans, in terms of credit card debt, things are definitely more favorable in terms of that. But when you think about it, is it worth it to put your home on the line? While HELOC rates are about 8.5%, which is a good thing because they've been slowly moving down lately. But then when you compare that to credit cards, if you're going to go and shop for your family members, even though credit cards rates are about 20%, personal loan rates about 13%, the better bet is to save ahead of time to buy gifts for your loved ones instead of going ahead and using that HELOC. Because really, again, your home is on the line, and we don't want anybody to end up homeless because you want to spread some holiday cheer for your family and friends.
On the air live with Linda Bell at Bankrate.com. Certainly, HELOCs were very attractive when the mortgage rates were close to zero. But now, yes, they went up and now back down a little bit, but certainly more attractive than the enormous, in fact, record high credit card interest rates people are paying here at the moment. How are the rates looking overall? Are we still at record highs for credit card interest rates right now this holiday season?
Yeah, credit card rates are definitely near highs, above 20%. But the thing is, if you want to use a credit card, and it's not that I'm telling people not to use credit cards for the holidays, a better bet is to try to get a 0% credit card. And that way you can, before you get to the end of that promotional period, you can kind of pay off that debt. That is a better bet. And we're also talking about personal loans as well, which is another thing that people could possibly do. But the better thing is the holidays aren't something that just popped up. It's not like your roof just caved in or you had some kind of big damage to your home. You know that the holidays are coming up, so save ahead of time. Create an emergency fund or specifically a holiday fund that you're actually saving money ahead of time so that you don't have these the burden of a credit card or a HELOC because you want to buy some gifts for your family members.
Yeah, that is excellent advice. And nowadays, when you go into department stores, they say, hey, we can give you 20% off your purchase today if you fill out this credit card application and all that. What are some of the pitfalls there when you're faced with those kind of offers?
Well, the big thing is that you have to make sure that you pay it back before the promotional period ends. Because you may think, oh, I bought something for, say, $1,000. And you say, well, I have a 6-month promotional period. I'll wait until afterwards to pay. But no, if you actually don't pay on that bill at all, you're going to be charged interest on that $1,000 amount. So make sure if you do that you have a strategy. Okay, I have 6 months. This was $1,000. I can afford to pay a few $100s a month and then pay it off before the promotional period ends. It's important to have a plan and not walk in the store and say, wow, 0%, I want to buy this, and then not have a plan. So for me, the plan is the most important thing with that situation.
Great information and some good reminders there, Linda. Thank you very much for joining us live here and putting out that information for Santa's helpers this holiday season. That is Linda Bell at Bankrate.com, joining us live here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Taking a look at the market action today, we see the Dow pulling back 154 points. We settled at 44,248. The S&P 500 down 18 at 6,035. And the NASDAQ down 49 points at 19,687. Checking the cryptos now, we see a Bitcoin having a wild ride again. Right now, down $1 at 96,504. Ethereum down just about 19 at 3,617. And Doge at the moment at 39 cents. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
You met Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now Lala and her friends share everything on Give Them Lala.
First time that I've been away from Sosa. Day one of being gone all day.
Tell her the phone calls. So how far are you? Well, she's just like really hungry. All right.
I'm very proud of myself that I got through it, and very proud of you, Mom, that you
got through it as well.
Yeah.
We held the fort down.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.